Previously on Archery Sights ad Nauseum. Both mounts are integrated into the Arxos's body, so you will not be able to change it out if you change bows like you would an Axel sight where the mounts are interchangeable. In future, I'd like to see them use this mounting point and develop a magnifier, because the pins are good enough, but it would be nice if they were a little bit more precise. Remember earlier how I said you probably want to select your to have your sight ring on the scope side of that? That's because there isn't a mounting point for the indicator pins on the outside of the scope. So if you put your tapes on the outside, you get no indicator pins except for this reference mark on the body of the sight, and for that reason I question why they even bothered making it an option to position the sight tape ring on the outside at all. You'll have to readjust your second axis after you loosen it, but I thought that was a clever idea or workaround that makes for a very clean design. Once again, check your second axis after you do it. I feel like other manufacturers did this better by having a locking lever that completely secures the wheel. That way you can actually lighten the tension on the dial and make it easier to turn. It wouldn't look quite as streamlined, but it would make the whole setup a little easier to manipulate. The indicator pins sit out too far from the sight tape to be able to get an accurate setting. In conclusion, overall impressions, the dialed Arxos sight is nice, but it needs work. Well, I'll be damned. Hello and welcome to another episode of Archery Sights ad Nauseum, and today we're going to take a look at Dialed Archery's newest offering for 2024, the Proof. Well, late 2024. It's been a while since I posted anything, and that's because I've been kept very busy until just now. Things are more manageable now that it's getting colder in the northern hemisphere, so I plan on getting more videos out during the winter. I'm going to try a different format and have the shot of myself sitting up here in the corner while the sight rotates in the main image. I will cut to pertinent footage as needed for the discussion, but most of the shot will be the sight rotating on a turntable. Sort of a little live-action screensaver for everybody. As with most of my reviews, this one is formatted to be listened to more than watched, so if you choose to pop in earbuds and listen to the audio while you do something else, you are not going to miss anything. There are timecodes in the description for individual topics if you choose to skip around instead of listening to me yammer on for 45 minutes. Disclaimer, I purchased this site with my own money. I am not affiliated with Dialed Archery in any way. I was not given early access, sent one to evaluate, or given any discount. So my opinions are my own, and there is nothing stopping me from expressing them. The site costs the equivalent of half of my monthly mortgage payment, so I expect it to be of very high quality and should be perfect in terms of fit, finish, and operation. I found that to be mostly true. This analysis is going to consist of the features of the Proof, the differences between it and Dialed Archery's first offering, the Arxos, how it compares to its closest competitors by price and market share, and whether the feature set and build quality justify its price tag. The sights I think it's meant to compete with are the UV Slider, Axel's Landslide, and now Axel's new for 2025 Driver. Of the two Axel sights, I'm going to focus on the Driver and compare its appearance, the layout of its controls, and its options for customization, because based on those, it looks as though Axel saw what Dialed and Ultraview were doing and decided, yeah, we want our own piece of that. I pre-ordered my Driver, so I will do a head-to-head between those three when I have them all together. The UV Slider, the Dialed Proof, and the Driver, because they all seem to fit or cater to the same group. Ultraview also came out with a Matthews-branded second-generation UV slider recently. I have no plans to buy one of those because I am not a Matthews guy. There are other offerings that might fit into the category of competitors in this bracket, but comparing them all would make this video about 5 hours long, so I'm going to stick with the three that I mentioned previously. Ultraview, Axel, and Dialed all know how to use social media to market their products, and the sites they offer of this particular type are designed to appeal to archers who hunt and also participate in events like the Total Archery Challenge and other long-distance 3D events. Sites like the UV Slider, Dialed Proof, and Axel Driver and Landslide enable the use of the same bow for both activities, hunting and 3D target, by offering a wide elevation range for TAC events and multi-pin scopes for hunting. If you've been to a TAC event, it's worth noting that most of the participants are not using target rigs, and Dialed Archery and Ultraview are always present in the vendor areas. They understand who is buying their stuff, and they act accordingly. The version of the Proof I ordered is the 3-pin fixed vertical with 10,000th pins, black Cerakoted sight body, and Picatinny mount, or pick mount for short. The sight is mounted to an Athens Axis 35. The cost totaled $580 shipped, and I ordered the sight light and side mount bracket so I could analyze them as well. The sight light cost $60, so the total cost came to $640 total. Premium archery equipment and products are becoming a very pricey endeavor as of lately. So I'm going to start with my most nitpicky of nitpicks. So if you're not interested in picking some nits with me, please skip to the next topic. One of my pet peeves is when individuals or organizations insist on inventing their own terms for things that already have names that are in common usage, or using an alternative spelling to add gravitas. What it actually does is create the need to waste time explaining what they mean by their chosen terms, when they could have just used the ones everyone else is using. One of my other naming peeves consists of shoehorning words into a name of something to form a clunky acronym. Without stretching this out too much, Dialed calls their scopes mags, their rheostat covers on their scopes optics slides, the elevation knob the void dial, get it because it has a hole in it, and they just named their new product the Pruf and spelled it Pruf with an umlaut. Why? I don't know, but it reminds me of an old Family Guy episode where Chris goes to a fancy, snooty restaurant to meet someone, and the establishment was called Food, but spelled with a barred U instead of two O's. Life imitates art sometimes. Anyway, I think Dialed could have just spelled Proof Proof and been fine. I find some naming schemes to be silly, but I won't belabor the point, so rant over, moving on. I mean, Bowtech just named one of their bows the Proven. So the site is named The Proof, and I'm a fan of truth in advertising. What is it proof of exactly? Well, it would seem the design of the Proof is evidence that the company listened to the feedback they received about the Arxos and applied it to their newest offering. Every issue I had with the Arxos that I highlighted in my review was addressed and corrected in the design of the Proof. I'm not saying they watched my video and said, this handsome specimen is making a lot of good points here, but the changes I noticed they made me feel represented. Dial deserves props for accepting constructive feedback and actually using it, and other companies and industries would benefit from doing the same. All that withstanding, Dial clarified on the inside of their box what they meant, but it's more of a mission statement from the company than a description of the product. It reads, Proof, showing truth and establishing that Dialed is not only here to stay, but it is changing archery forever. Apparently, if you buy this sight from a brick-and-mortar store, it will be packaged in a clear plastic cylinder so you can see how it's configured, and if you order it online from their store, it'll show up in a cardboard box with nice graphics because you ordered it, you're the one who ordered it, and already know how it's configured. The box is just nice enough to denote that something in it is expensive, but it also doesn't look like they wasted a lot of money on it. So good on Dialed for not wasting money on things like magnetic closures on a box many of us will probably throw out. Money should be spent on the product itself and not on the box in which it is delivered. In my opinion, fancy packaging is a diversion, and a piece of junk doesn't get any better if it shows up in a fancy box. The Arxos was originally designed to have clean lines and a minimalistic look, and the Proof continues the aesthetic while also cutting weight. They managed to get it close to or under 10 ounces depending on the chosen features. This makes the Proof one of the lightest target/hunting hybrid sights on the market, being about a half ounce lighter than the Axel Landslide. Lighter seems to be the new direction into which the archery industry is cycling. Everything is getting lighter after they convinced everyone that heavier was better. So it kind of moves in, if you follow the archery industry enough, everything moves in cycles, and we're spinning back around to, with bows, they went fast, they chased speed, then they tried to make them smooth, and now they're trying to make them dead in the hand, and now that they made them dead in the hand, now they're trying to make them lighter, and now they're trying to make them faster again. So everything's cyclical. Inside the box is the sight, a paper target for sighting in, I suppose, and one set of stick-on sight tapes and sight scales. Keep that in mind, I'm not done with it yet. The sight does not come with any tools and does not come with the tool necessary to unscrew the castle nut that holds the void dial in place. Keep that in mind, I'm not done with it yet. If you put the Arxos and Proof next to each other, it is fairly easy to recognize how far Dialed has come over their short few years of operation. The Arxos looks more like a prototype than a production model sitting next to the Proof. The Proof is available in 7 colors. The switch tape rings where you mount the sight tapes are available in 16 colors. The rheostat cover optic slide has 16 colors. The void dial is available in 16 colors, and there are 4 options for pin configurations for a total of 84,006 combinations because the colors of the sight body, the scope, and the mounting bracket can all be chosen separately. I went with black because black is beautiful and I'm boring. The mounting options for the Proof include the side riser mount, Picatinny clamp or pick mount for short, and Matthews bridge lock dovetail, and the mounts are detachable so you can swap between them. This is true of most sights on the market where the bracket is machined as a separate piece, but I note this because the sight body and the mounting bracket on the Arxos were machined as a single piece, so whichever mounting option for the Arxos was chosen when it was purchased, you're stuck with it. The Proof can be reconfigured for all present and future mounting points by contrast. This is advantageous because, let's face it, the accessories on our bows tend to stick around longer than the bows on which they are mounted. Well, at least until something new comes along that tickles your fancy. The mounting brackets for the Proof are available on Dial's website for $90 each. They are expensive, but compared to how much other high-end accessory companies charge for a conversion kit, I'm looking at UXL, they're a steal. I did see some people online lamenting that there's no option for the core system, which is Bowtech's answer to the Matthews bridge lock. Dial's answer to them was, and I'm paraphrasing, if enough people ask for it, we'll consider it. So Bowtech guys, you're stuck using the side mount for now. Bowtech just changed their proprietary sight mounting system for 2025 to something that bolts to the inside of the riser, probably because they didn't want Matthews to do to them what they just did to Athens. So they're going to need to make up their minds first before asking sight manufacturers for something proprietary. There is currently no option for a long dovetail bar on the Proof like the Arxos, so archers who would prefer to run the sight far out in front of the riser or adjust it to align your peep sight and scope ring are going to be limited. The riser mount version has a short dovetail bar with a single slot machined into it. That slot has 4 indexing positions that line up with the locking knob to give you about 2 inches of adjustment for use of increasing your sight radius or matching your peep to your scope. Whether it's enough or not is going to depend on your setup and your peep diameter. I use a 3/16 inch peep at 28 inches, and it lines up to the scope rather well using the Picatinny mount, and that has 0 in or out adjustment. The bridge lock may have a few positions on the dovetail. The only one I know that has some vertical adjustment at the mounting bracket is the Picatinny mount, which can be moved up or down to the riser to affect your elevation adjustment range. The bridge lock obviously has none, and so does the side mount, unless you have multiple mounting holes on the side of your riser. As the packaging states, the sight is intended for use by bow hunters, though as I mentioned before, this would be a good sight for pulling double duty for hunting in 3D or just 3D, which is what I use it for. Now recently, when Matthews unveiled their 2025 Matthews branded slider, they made a statement that I need to address. They claimed the Matthews UV slider is the first sight on the market that is designed to work with the Matthews bridge lock without requiring an offset built into the mounting bracket. So the design of the first generation of UV slider was modified so the body of the sight would sit in front of the riser instead of a little outside of the riser. You know, the location where they've been mounting sights for decades. The reason this matters is because if you design a sight to function when it is in a particular spot, a little outside the riser, and now it's sitting in front of the riser, then you may run out of windage when you try to move the scope in towards the riser. Most bow sights have only so much windage, and now the body of the sight is sitting in a place it was not designed to be. That is why a lot of companies had to design new brackets with offset built into them when the bridge lock and Picatinny mounts were entering the market. Archers were reporting that they would run out of windage trying to sight in their V3Xs with the first sights that accepted a bridge lock mount, so companies had to add an offset to their adapter brackets. The Matthews slider being designed specifically to sit in front of the riser when used with the bridge lock is an improvement over the original, but the statement that UltraView was the first to do so is false. Dial Archery beat them to it by about 2 years with the Arxos and now with the Prüf. The Arxos did not have an offset in the pick rail or bridge lock versions, while also offering it in a side mount dovetail. They chose to compensate for the sight body being in 2 possible positions by giving it an oversized windage bar with a massive amount of windage adjustment. So if you have an Arxos and you ran out of windage, your bow is in desperate need of a tune. The Proof, by comparison, is designed to sit in front of the riser with the pick mount, bridge lock, and the side mount. They accomplish this with the side riser mount by machining it with an inset instead of an offset. It looks like, or is one of several reasons, why Dial chose not to include a gang windage adjustment and rely exclusively on the micro adjust system. The other possible reason is to reduce weight. So they no longer have to worry about having it in two different positions, so they don't have to add that giant windage bar on the front like the Arxos and make it look like a hammerhead shark wearing a monocle. Now, being micro-adjust windage only does limit the range of windage adjustment that is available, and there's a chance your point of impact may fall outside of that range if your bow is tuned outside or inside of its recommended center shot. I didn't have that issue, but it's a possibility, and a user on Archery Talk already encountered this. But I think he had his bow broadhead tuned. I'm guessing he did it with the rest because I think he said he tuned it outside of center shot. Although it might have been, I think he said he ran out of space on the inside. So either way, his bow wasn't tuned down the middle, and most sights are designed to, be sighted in with the arrow tuned down the middle. The windage adjustment moves on the Proof with very positive clicks, similarly to the Arxos, but contrary to the UV slider. The UV slider's dual dial was advertised as pulling out and pushing in to lock it with a positive click, and it does not. It feels like it's only held in place with friction. It's also supposed to turn with positive clicks, and it really doesn't do that either. The movements are less precise and tactile. They are tactile, but they're not audible, so you don't get that satisfying click, 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 click going through it. Not only is it disappointing to have something show up and fail to function how it's advertised, and the company make no effort to fix it, it's an extra kick in the teeth when you see it's been fixed on the new one. So they knew it was a problem and they fixed it, they're just not doing anything for all the ones that are already out there. Thankfully, the Proof doesn't have that issue and functions exactly as advertised. I'm looking forward to seeing how the Axel driver performs, but I'm pretty confident it will perform as advertised. Axel's reputation is well earned for being expensive, but very well constructed. The Proof has a circular locking knob on the front that performs two functions. It locks the windage bar down, and it also secures the second axis when the scope carrier is being slid up or down the rail. The windage bar also has a set screw to completely lock down the windage adjustment knob, though I think that might just be holding the spring and ball detent in for the windage clicks. So it might not be a dedicated, it might not be a lock, it might just be holding those pieces in place. The Proof carries over the angled elevation system, AES for short, from the Arxos, which is why the elevation rail is on a slant. Its purpose is to shrink your pin gaps at longer distances by moving the scope closer to the archer's eye as it moves down the rail, and results in the sight picture being the same despite moving the scope a shorter distance. The best way I can explain it is if you put your thumb and index finger up to your eye and pretend to pinch something at a distance. After you've acquired your target, extend your arm out further and do the same thing. The gap between your fingers when they are closer to your eye will be much smaller than the gap your fingers created when your arm was fully extended. Your index and thumb are still in the same place in reference to what you're looking at between them, but they get closer together as you bring your fingers closer to your eye. That's how I understand pin gaps and sight radius. The AES system takes that idea and makes it dynamic, where the gap is wider at closer distances, and it shrinks them as you move the scope down for longer distances. That's the how of it. The does it make a difference and by how much of it is going to depend highly on your setup, and some archers are going to benefit from it more than others. In my reviews on the Arxos, I did some unscientific testing and found that since the total rearward travel of the scope amounted to 1 inch total, I gained about 5 yards at the maximum distance I could set it before the elevation bottomed out. So while the AES system does have a measurable effect, I don't think it's a feature that in isolation would motivate me to choose this sight over another one. Now, if you're shooting a lower poundage or are short on arrow clearance, then you may be able to buy a little more distance before you need to move to a lower pin or use holdovers. I think for archers who are pulling 60 pounds or over and you don't prescribe to the Ranch Fairy school of arrow composition, I don't think you're going to see a significant enough difference with this sight over other comparable sights that have a target sight level of vertical travel range like the UV slider or the Axel driver. If you're comparing the Proof to a hunting sight with a more limited range of vertical travel, travel, such as the CB Trekpo 2V, then the extra yardage gained at the bottom with the Proof may mean the difference between having to hold over a long-distance target or be able to point at it directly. I'm going to cut in briefly on this. This is future me thinking of something while I edit this video. One thing that I didn't factor in when I was talking about arrow clearance is the addition of secondary and ranger pins with regards to increasing arrow clearance and making it so that you can aim straight at something without having to use a holdover. So I was thinking, they didn't really have multiple, or they definitely didn't have multi-pin vertical sights. I think there was only one of them when I started archery, so I'm still of that mindset, and I didn't think of utilizing the second or third pin in a vertical pin stack in order to increase your arrow clearance, so that might be another factor that may make the whole AES system a bit redundant. Back to the video. This is the part of the sight that was designed with tack in mind, because most hunters would not, or rather should not, be attempting a shot at an animal where the AES system would make the most significant difference. The feature referred to as the dial brake on the Arxos has become the shift lever on the Proof, and it works significantly better. It is now a switch of sorts. It sits above the dial, so you can flip it up, grab the dial, make your adjustment, then press it back down to secure it in place. Pressing it down flush applies maximum tension, and while it is advertised as a 100% lockdown, it will turn with enough force applied to the knob, or the dial. It is much stiffer when engaged as compared to the UV slider, which moves much more easily with its lock engaged. I have to take a look at mine, but I think you can adjust that to make it stiffer. Everybody's complaining that you can grab a hold of the dial grip on the UV slider and give it a twist, but I actually think there is I have to take a look and see. I think they do have a tension adjustment on that. All the same, the shift lever can also be used as a wheel tensioner and set in a halfway position where the wheel can turn but the sight will hold its position. I don't have plans to use it that way personally because it's easy enough to just flip it up, set the yardage, and re-engage it. The shift lever on the Proof is in a more ergonomically useful position, being situated next to the elevation dial than the dial brake used to be. It's quicker and easier to access than other sights where the locking knob is on the opposite side of the adjustment wheel, like the CB Trek Pro 2V. Granted, the Trek Pro 2V costs half as much and is not made in the United States. The UV slider is similar in that its lock is designed to be easy to access, but the paddle is recessed into the sight body when fully engaged. The lock on the Axel driver looks like you have to reach over to the front of the sight to flip it on and off, which shouldn't be difficult, but does require a little more hand movement. The elevation wheel on the Proof, also known as the Void dial, has zero slop or backlash when changing directions, and the movement is very smooth with even pressure throughout the entire length of its travel. The Arxos was smooth in the middle and became stiffer at the extreme ends of its travel. Early models of the Arxos had slop in the gearing and had to be sent back for updated parts to get rid of it. That was a point of contention with a lot of customers because it equated to about a yard's worth of play and made it difficult to dial it into a precise setting. The Proof has none of these issues, and setting precise yardages without having to overshoot it and backtrack is not a problem. The Proof also has more aggressive knurling on its Void dial. The one on the Arxos was a little bit shallow, so it would be a lot easier to grip it and give it a twist. The designers at Dial did not include a separate adjustment for dial tension other than the shift lever. The Arxos had a pair of set screws on the rail that added friction, but it was all or nothing, and they were not very effective. The castle nut on the Proof that secures the Void dial to the sight body can be clocked by screwing it in or out before you tighten down its locking screw to increase or decrease tension. However, the shift lever works well enough and is accessible enough that I don't believe it was worth trying to come up with alternatives to using it. The Proof has micro-adjustable first and second axes, sort of. The first axis is on the interface of the sight body of the mounting bracket. The second axis is on the scope carrier, same as the Arxos. The issue with the Arxos is anytime you needed to tweak the position of your scope, you would lose your 0 on your second axis and have to check it over again. The issue is fixed on the Proof by making the second axis micro-adjustable and adding a locking knob so the second axis stays fixed in place when you loosen the screws to move the scope carrier. So that's another point of contention that they listened to the customers and corrected. Both the first and second axes consist of two opposing set screws that press on a block that sits between them and pivots on its other mounting screw. To change the alignment, you loosen the screw on one side and tighten the other. It's simple and effective, but with a sight pushing or exceeding $600, I was hoping for something along the lines of a worm drive like the Montana Black Gold put all over their competition site. Sooner or later I'll get a review out on that. Anyway, the Proof has an independent first and second axis, while the UV slider and XL driver have a single adjustment to cover first and second axis because their windage bars do not allow for them. So with the latter two, you'll just have to trust them when they say their scope carrier is machined perpendicular to the elevation rail. The third axis adjustment on the Proof is still on the scope rod and is not micro adjustable. The scope has a machined stud, we'll go with that, stud, that slides into a clamp and is secured by the third axis locking screw. The stud on the scope is round enough to pivot in the clamp, and that provides you with your third axis adjustment. When locked down, it holds tightly enough not to move under moderate force. Since I don't always know my own strength, I'm not going to see how much force it will take to move it when it's locked. I'm not going to try to break my scope or break my sight, because that's not covered under warranty if you break it on purpose. It feels sturdy enough that a reasonable impact should not cause it to shift, though. By comparison, the UV slider has micro-adjustable third axis. So technically it doesn't have a first axis adjustment because the design of the windage bar on the UV slide doesn't allow for it. The third axis on the XL driver is on the scope carrier and doesn't look to be micro-adjustable. Though I haven't seen it yet, it may or may not be. The Proof does not have a dedicated adjustable zero stop, but it is capable of being set up so the top of the sight's travel is your 20. To do that, you set the elevation at the top of its travel, and then you slide the scope carrier along its rail to get sighted in at 20. I was able to get it close enough for my purposes, but that technique may not be precise enough for others. If you fall into the latter group, you can set your 20 with the elevation wheel and leave a little room above it for fine-tuning purposes. Dialed sells a separate piece for the Arxos to bolt onto the rail and function as a stopper, but that part is not listed as being compatible with the Proof. The rails are similarly sized, so it might work. I'll have to order one and try it, but I do still have an Arxos. The UV slider does not have a factory zero stop, at least until the next generation comes out. I think the Matthews one does. There is an aftermarket stop available for the UV slider made by a company called JQ3 Designs, and they cost $4.25 plus shipping. The XL driver is the only one of the three that comes with an adjustable zero stop. One thing the Proof and Arxos lack that most sights on the market usually offer is multiple mounting positions between the sight body and the mounting bracket. The purpose is to be able to move the sight up or down so the range of motion the scope can travel falls within the range of your point of impact. The Proof and Arxos make up for it by sliding the scope carrier up and down on the elevation rail to determine your closest yardage setting. I think HHA may work similarly too. They may have mounting holes right by the scope carrier. But I don't have a lot of experience with those. The UV slider and XL driver have a more traditional layout with multiple thread holes to set your elevation range. The indicator pins for the sight tape on the Proof are sharper and closer to the sight tape than the Arxos. They still sit a little higher than I would prefer, but they are much easier to get a precise yardage than the Arxos, and you could probably layer some of the test tapes underneath them under your chosen tape to get it up closer to the indicator pins. The indicators are not as sharp as the UV slider, but they do the job without being sharp enough to stab your fingers. The Proof has a pair of switch tapes, one on the inside and one on the outside, and 3 indicator pins on the inside and 1 indicator pin on the outside. I think there should be 3 on both sides personally, but it's still an improvement on the Arxos. The UV slider has 3 indicator pins on the inside and 1 fixed indicator pin on the outside, with the mounting points for metal sight tape plates and stick-on sight tapes. The XL driver has a single mounting position for its tape on the inside with 3 indicator pins, and the sight uses engraved metal sight tapes that hopefully come with it, but probably have to be purchased separately because XL is a greedy, cheap bastard like that. To adjust the indicator pins on the Proof, you loosen this single locking screw, and each pin can be slid independently of the others without disturbing each other's position. There is about 180 degrees of available movement on the inside pin set, and they can be set at different angles so the archer can determine the angle at which he is looking at them. After that, he can select his sight tape, mount it to a switch tape ring, and lock it down so it matches the position of the indicator pins. This is actually a nice feature that most sights are not capable of doing. The lone pin on the outside is unlocked with the same set screw as the ones on the inside and works the same way. The sight also comes with a reference card, same as the Arxos, to set your indicator pin gaps if you choose the 3-pin vertical or the 1-pin vertical with the XR or extended range pin. The Proof comes with 2 switch tape ring mounting locations and 2 switch tape rings. However, the sight only ships with 1 full set of sight tapes, which I think is a miscalculation on the part of Dialed. If you wanted to set up both rings at the same time, you will be unable to do so without buying another set of tapes or printing your own. I think if the sight has 2 sight tape mounting locations, 2 sets of tapes should have been included. The switch tape ring on the side of the arrow shelf is easy to remove from the sight by loosening its tensioning screw and wiggling it off. Being able to remove it makes it easy to stick a sight tape on it as opposed to trying to do it while it's still attached to the sight. The outside switch tape ring is harder to access and cannot be removed without also removing the void dial with it. The switch tape rings do not open enough to slip them over where they are mounted, and the sight does not come with the tool needed to remove the void dial. I'll probably leave the numbered scale on it that it came with, since I'm likely to just use the sight tape on the inside, and I don't have any extra tapes because they weren't included. And I haven't paid for the subscription service to use the sight tape generator yet, though I might. Regarding the sight tapes that are included, of which there are 24, I haven't spent enough time with them yet to ascertain if the tapes provided account for the reduced pin gaps, for lack of a better term, that the angled elevation system creates by moving the scope back towards the riser. I'll have to leave that for a part 2. The set is not as comprehensive as what comes with the UV slider, which has 40 tapes per set, but the ones that come with the Proof should be sufficient. Dialed also has a sight tape generator on their website with a subscription service of $10 a year, so if you want to make precise tapes and have access to a printer, it's an affordable alternative to using the pre-made ones. The available scope configurations for the Proof consist of a fixed vertical single pin with an XR or extended range pin, fixed 3-pin vertical stack, 3 adjustable horizontal pins, or 5 adjustable horizontal pins. You can also choose between 19,000th and 10,000th for the fiber thickness. The top pin is green, center pin is red, and the bottom is green on the 3-pin vertical, and on the single pin vertical, the top is green and the extended range pin is red. Brightness-wise, I find the pins to be bright enough in most lighting conditions, but there is an optional sight light available for $60 if you need more light. There are no options on the website to choose the color of the fibers, though Dialed may set it up the way you want on request. The sight light has 3 adjustable brightness settings and a 15-minute auto shutoff. This is future me again, checking in or popping myself back into my script or into my presentation with something that I didn't think of when I was writing the script. The sight light for the Dialed Arxos and Proof, the way that it's designed, being a replacement for the optic slide, i.e. aka the rheostat cover, actually gives it even more brightness adjustment than just the 3 brightness settings that are the push button ones. So you can slide it in and fine tune the amount of light that you're giving your fibers, so you can set that to just enough, exactly how much light you want. And then it has the 15-minute shut off so that you don't waste battery life. So that's another feature of Dialed sights that I don't believe any other company has on the market. So moving along. Dialed's scope housings currently only come in one size. There are Sunshades and scope kits available on Dialed's website for purchase. I don't plan on using either, so I didn't purchase them to evaluate. If you would like to run a different manufacturer's scope on the Proof, that can be done with the purchase of a Windage offset block, and provided the scope is one that uses a bolt instead of a threaded rod. The cost of the Proof with no scope is $350, which is $50 cheaper than the UV slider. I'm not sure how much an Axle driver costs with no scope. All the ones that I saw on Lancaster Archery all had a scope included with them, or I just didn't scroll down far enough. So all the Dialed scopes have a small bubble level that is mounted in the top of the scope instead of the bottom. So against my wishes, that is one thing that hasn't changed. Some people like it. I am not one of them. The reason they have it there is to get it out of the way to use the bottom of the scope for extended yardage. Again, designed for hunters and tacticians. Get it? Tacticians? I'm here all week. Me, I prefer an obnoxiously large bubble like on the Shrewd Optum. That way I can pick it up in my peripheral vision while I focus on looking through the pin and into the target. My brain is not wired to look up at a bubble level after looking down at it for most of my archery career. I also believe a smaller bubble does not work as well as a larger, longer one. Try leveling a picture with one of those cubes they use on a camera tripod, and then check it with a proper level. You're going to get a more accurate reading with the full-size level than with the smaller one. It's functional, and I'm not going to change it out, but it's not my preference. I have alluded to this earlier in the review, but one thing Dialed is doing better than any of its direct competitors is its opportunities for customization. At present, Dialed has a variety of different color options for the Proof available for purchase. Items like different colored switch tape rings, rheostat covers, and void dial rings. There is also a service active on their website to customize the site before purchase. This allows you to select the pin configuration and fiber size, the mounting bracket, and then mix and match the colors of the sight body, the void dial, the switch tapes, and the rheostat cover and scope. The best thing is, it does not incur any additional cost to customize the package. You can arrange to have your Proof assembled into any Frankensteinian abomination you want, and they'll put it together and ship it to you for the same price as if you went with a single color. You want it to look like a fighter jet that hasn't been painted yet? Your wish is their command. It's worth noting some of the parts remain black regardless of what color you choose, such as the windage locking knob, the shift lever, and portions of the side riser mount. I can appreciate how much of a pain in the ass offering options like this and assembling them a la carte is, because I do something similar. Every holster I make is made to order, and keeping stock handy for the number of releases and color options I offer is not practical. So they're choosing to do it the hard way, and I think that's commendable. So while the site certainly isn't cheap, you won't have to pay any extra to get it delivered to your door the way that you want it. It's worth noting also that all the body and scope colors Dialed offers, other than black, are intended to match finishes offered by Matthews and Hoyt. So to hell with me and everybody else who shoots something different, I suppose. So the level of customization offered by Dialed Archery is vast compared to UltraView, where up until recently you had to order the UV slider in your choice of black, black, or black, and as a package with the UV3XL scope and 3-pin horizontal cartridge, regardless of whether you actually planned on using them, and then you had to order whatever cartridge and color accents you were actually planning on using. UltraView does come with the sight light, a lot of spare parts, and the tools needed to make adjustments, so that's something. So you can weigh out the pros and cons of each sight and make your own decision based on what it comes with and what it's capable of doing. As for the XL driver, I don't know what it comes with yet and what options are available for purchase separately for it, so I can't comment on it yet. I do know that it's going to come in black, OD green, or whatever they're calling OD green, and probably some kind of coyote color. And I know the gear cover is going to be changeable, so you can put different patterns and customize it that way. This is an important point for the Southpaws. Dialed is offering the Proof sight in a distinct right and left-handed model, but there is no option currently for a left-handed horizontal pin scope. So it's vertical stack only for the lefties. So it's not going to be like UltraView where they flipped a right-handed sight upside down and called it left-handed. That was really a kick in the nuts for the lefties. That being said, I haven't seen a left-handed Proof sight yet, but I did message Dialed about it and asked if their left-handed sight was a true lefty and not a flipped-over right-hander. The response I received was that their left-handed models are indeed a true left-hand, so Dialed is not going to do you dirty if you're a left-handed archer, which is good because there's only about, I think, left-handed archers. I'm a lefty, but I learned how to do everything right-handed. So I shoot a pistol left-handed and I shoot everything else right-handed. But if I did, I would be part of like a 5% of the population that not only writes with your left hand and uses your left hand, but actually does other things like shooting with them. Fit and finish are very good with a few small exceptions. The Proof is assembled with quality hardware, the Cerakote finish is consistent on the sight body and scope, all the parts are well finished, and there are no burrs or sharp edges. It's as good of a machine job as a company is capable of offering. So that being said, there are some areas that are concealed when the sight is fully assembled that were missed by whomever does their Cerakoting. The interface of the mounting bracket and the sight body has bare aluminum on the inside. I find this to be sloppy and not befitting of an almost $600 sight. This area should not have been skipped over, and to anyone who doesn't think it matters, I would challenge you to find that on a Spot Hogg, Axel, HHA, CBE, or even an UltraView sight. It's those little details that can make a difference. It's not a deal breaker for me, but their quality control should have flagged that and sent it back to whomever does the coding and had them correct their mistake. It could also be the rushed nature of a new product, and hopefully when you get down the line, some of that goes away. Also, the void dial on the Proof I received is uncoded in the area where it slides into the sight body, while the pictures of the loose ones you can buy on the website show they are fully coated. The Arxos ones were the same way, and I can understand keeping that area bare to avoid the piece getting stuck, but it still bugs me, and I don't see why they couldn't factor that into the thickness of the coating when they had those made and then had them properly finished. It's my belief that everywhere on a piece of equipment that there is a reasonable chance a customer may see should be properly finished. My last word on fit and finish, and I'm being especially picky with this one, the coating on the shift lever and some of the other black parts like the locking windage knob looks to be anodized, while the rest of the body is Cerakoted. On the other colors this would probably look fine as an accent, but the tone and texture of those parts are different from the black Cerakote of the body, so it's not a big deal, but now that I've noticed it, I can't unsee it. Other than those items, the sight is just about perfect. I wouldn't mind seeing an alternative to stick-on sight tapes developed, and maybe switch tapes with engraved sight scales on them at some point. So just a thought for somebody with a 3D printer and an entrepreneurial spirit, there is a niche that has yet to be filled. This is future editor me, again, cutting in for one other thing regarding fit and finish that I didn't see or didn't notice when I was recording the audio for this video. The Cerakote finish on the side mount bracket that I ordered separately didn't seem to have been given enough time to cure. I don't know what kind of Cerakote they were using, if it's the bake-on finish or the air dry version, but the edges of the corners of my bracket are already starting to show wear, and I only had it out for a couple of sessions. I was carrying it around in my pocket for a little while, but it was also in a plastic bag, so that certainly shouldn't have caused wear. So I don't know if it was because it's an early run thing, or because of the way that it was coated. That isn't how Cerakote is supposed to behave, so I don't think it either wasn't applied properly or wasn't getting enough time to cure. Dialed Archery supports their products with what they are calling a lifetime transferable no BS warranty. They warrant their product against damage and defects. The damage is preferably not intentional, though I don't know how they would prove it was or wasn't unless you filmed yourself doing it. I guess by that metric I wouldn't be able to torture test mine and send it back for a replacement. Good to know. Regardless, they put into writing what many companies are reluctant to do. Most companies will take care of you if you're appropriately contrite and aren't being a douche, but generally they won't codify their intention to support you. Axel is known to fix things, and UV changed their warranty policy from 1 year to a limited lifetime warranty where damage caused by misuse or mishandling is not covered, and modification, alteration, or disassembly immediately voids the warranty. So they'll likely take care of you if you approach the situation in a polite manner, but they can also tell you to go fuck yourself. As far as customer service, my customer service experience with Dialed has been very good so far. Every message I submitted was answered within 24 hours, including questions that had nothing to do with my order, like the question about the left-handed sights. They actually seem like a pretty good set of people. One other notable elephant in the room I'll cover now is Dialed Archery products are all designed, manufactured, and assembled in the United States, as are Axel and Trueball. Ultraview is not, because if they were, they would proudly stamp "Made in the United States" on their packaging like all the other companies that actually are. For anyone who says designed and built in the United States is the same thing, it's not. Legally speaking, it is not. Of course, there are other more subtle clues that products aren't made in the United States, like import records, but also the amount of stuff that's included with them. If an archery product comes with a toolkit, extra screws, and replacement parts, then it's probably not made in the United States because the company's margins allow for a lot of doodads to be included. I'll talk more about that when I go into my Ultraview button versus button clone video, since this video is already too long. But I thought I would touch on that briefly in case country of manufacture or the way companies choose to disclose their country of manufacture are a consideration that may influence your purchase. The conclusion section is always the hardest for me to write because I have to try and sum everything up and make a decision, and I seem to end up making a similar statement at the end of most of my analyses. I usually end up with this non-committal statement where I say the product is good, but there are less expensive alternatives with similar feature sets that will perform the same tasks. The Proof isn't really going to be much different. I like the looks and the features, and it's actually going to be on one of my bows, as opposed to something I bought, evaluated, and decided I'm not going to use. There are some minor QC things that need to be cleaned up but are not visible when they're fully assembled. It's highly customizable from point of sale without nickel and diming the customer. It's made in the USA, and the company will support the product for as long as they remain in business, whether you bought it firsthand or not. There are not many other companies that offer that combination of attributes. If you care about the features and don't care about some of the metadata points like where it's made, what it's made of, and who's making it, then there are other options to consider that are less expensive and essentially do the same thing. So there's that non-committal answer again. I think the refinements that went into the Proof make it a more solid product than its predecessor. Is it worth the cost? That's a tough call. Products that can be legally branded as made in the United States do carry a premium, not just in price, but also build quality. The Proof is a competently engineered site with lifetime product support, and it'll do everything it's supposed to. It's marginally rough around the edges in ways you'll only see when you take it apart, and it performs as advertised. So take that how you will, and if you have any questions that I didn't cover in this analysis, please leave them in the comments and I will answer them in a timely fashion. And until next time, take care, stay safe, and happy hunting. With a single slot machined into the center, and that slot has 4 indexing positions that line up with the locking knob to give you about 2 inches of adjustment for use in increasing your sight radius or matching your peep to the scope. That's a hell of a run-on sentence. Finish is consistent on the sight body and scope. All parts are well finished, and there are no burrs or fuck.